The best investment that a city can make, bar none, is to plant street trees. Like literally, when you plant street trees, you are spending very, very little money to create something that actually generates, in terms of tax base and wealth, a ton of value for your city.
Chuck, welcome to Grow Healthy, Help People, a podcast that Accordis, my company, puts out. We love talking to nonprofit leaders, and I'm fascinated by the work you're doing in strong towns. Reading about what you're doing, the work you're doing, I'm kind of thinking, oh man, this makes so much sense. So where are you calling in from today?
Thanks, Shae. It's nice to talk to you. I'm in Brainerd, Minnesota, which is my hometown. I actually office in the old middle school where I went to 8th and 9th grade and met my wife. So that's where I'm at.
What is Brainerd, Minnesota known for?
Well, that's a good question. You know, if you're outside of Minnesota, you probably know it for the movie Fargo, which is not, I think, our proudest thing. But we're a couple hours north of Minneapolis, St. Paul, lakes, trees. You know, you're starting to get into the Canadian forest. And so we tend to get a lot of metro area people drive up on the weekends for lake cabins and recreating and that kind of thing.
Beautiful area. So are you guys, we'll talk about strong towns a lot in a few minutes. I'd love to hear a little bit of your story and about where you live now. Are you in a village, suburb, large town? Like what does it look like there?
I'm in the middle of a historic old city. So our city was founded in 1871, and the original plat was around the railroad tracks, and I live in the middle of that. My house was built in 1914, and it's about 5 blocks from here, so I walk to work. It's a nice small town is what it is. You know, we have 14,000 people, so kind of a smallish place. Out adjacent to us, there's the city of Baxter, and that has all the big box stuff that you would think of. So the Target and Walmart and all that, that is where my family farm was. So my parents still live there. It was homesteaded by my great-great-grandparents. And that was about 1,000 people when I was a kid and is about 9,000 today. So a lot of growth proportionally, still kind of a small place, but it's kind of like the regional commercial center.
Yeah. So there's not many 100-year-old buildings there. There's a lot of 100-year-old buildings around where you are.
Yeah, nothing over there. I mean, we lived in the old farmhouse and we actually tore it down when we moved. I have one of the older houses in the city. My neighborhood has a collection of what I'm thinking at like the time would have been like a mansion for, you know, in the early 1900s. And so they were worth preserving. And there's, I don't know, maybe a couple dozen of them in the neighborhood. And they're really, really special homes. I mean, they're really great places. But awesome. Yeah, everything else is, you know, in some other state of development.
So we're going to dive deep into strong towns in just a second, but tell me a little bit of your story, how you got from civil engineering, your education, and then how you got into this nonprofit leadership role in starting strong towns.
It's really, people think that I had some master plan, and I really didn't. I was working as an engineer, went back to grad school, got a planning degree, and ended up by accident starting my own planning and engineering firm. Cities just started to call me when I was in school, and I did a project here and a project there. And then pretty soon I'm hiring my classmates and I had a firm. Ultimately, we had 5 offices and 13 staff, and we were doing planning work all over the state. Then 2008 happened, and my business plan was not kind of immune to the crazy downturn that we had. I mean, we were growth oriented. So we were working with cities that were growing, and then all of a sudden nobody was growing. And my firm shrunk from 5 offices and 13 people to 2 offices and 3 people and a lot of debt. So for me, there was a period of time that I spent frustrated, and I actually loved to write. So I started writing a blog about why our cities were going broke. And that blog is what turned into Strong Towns and the Strong Towns movement. People started to pass it around. I started a podcast with it. I started to get invited to speak at different places. I had a foundation I had a couple of friends of mine like say, you need to start a nonprofit, and they actually filled out the paperwork and got it going. I had a foundation here locally that was following my work and ultimately gave me 3 years of startup money to leave my practice and go figure out what this would be. Today, Strong Towns is I think in terms of membership and reach, the largest urban advocacy organization in the country in North America. We've got millions of people that we're reaching every year. 6,500 members, people who donate to us and are part of our group, hundreds of local chapters, and we're trying to make cities strong and resilient and more prosperous to live in.
So before we dive into the bankruptcy question, because I was looking at your website, bankruptcy and city bankruptcies and town bankruptcies is a big deal. Who are the members of Strong Towns now? Like, who is the target group or city or people? Is it individuals or organizations?
So internally, we talk about three audiences: elected and appointed public officials, so people who make decisions in cities. That's about 15% of our audience. Technical professionals, so people who advise the people who make decisions, whether they're on city payroll or they're consultants or what have you. That's maybe another like 15, 20% of our audience. And the rest are people we call concerned citizens, just people who live in a place, identify with it, care about it, and want to make it better. And that's the vast majority of our audience. When we look at our membership, it tends to be people in that latter category who give us $5, $10 a month. And there's no, like, you don't get like a tote bag or anything. It's literally like, we love your message. We want to have more people see this. Here's our contribution to that. So it's, we're a 501c3, so it's a way of people making a financial contribution to us.
Yeah, and by them contributing to you guys, it not only is encouraging to them, they like to be a part of it, but it's also forwarding that mission to others who have never heard of Strong Towns, who've never thought about their city going bankrupt, who've never thought about, why are we making a new neighborhood over there when this neighborhood's sewers and roads are falling apart. You mentioned bankruptcy, or maybe I'm just looking at your website thinking bankruptcy. Wait, cities don't go bankrupt. Cities have unlimited money. That should never happen. Like, how does that happen? Like, tell me more about the mission, Strong Towns, what you guys do, and the problem you're solving.
So there is this kind of misnomer that cities don't go bankrupt. We've had a lot of conversation about economics in our culture, obviously, but the federal government, can print their own money. They have their own printing press. They technically can't go bankrupt, although they can bankrupt all of us. Cities are different. Cities don't get to play that game. Cities are more like a family where they actually have revenue coming in and money coming out. They make short-term and long-term promises and obligations. And the thing that we've originally focused on is grown from there is that infrastructure part of the deal. We are told, and this is part of my engineering practice, I was part of this, when you invest in infrastructure, you're going to get growth. When you go out and build stuff, that's how the cities make an investment. That's how the community makes an investment. And you get this return of new businesses, new homes, new growth, what have you. And the reality is it doesn't work that way. Cities, when they build, let's just say a road, are making what is an eternal obligation to maintain that road. They will not only, pay to go out and fix the potholes and seal the cracks, but when the road goes bad, they'll go out and replace it and they'll renovate it. Those costs have to be paid for by someone. And ostensibly, they're paid for by the taxpayers who utilize that road. When you look at the tax base and the revenue that comes from it, in the development pattern that we've adopted post-World War II, there's never enough money. There's literally like never enough money. Think of being very poor and trying to get the most out of every resource you have. Now transfer that to a road. You would want to have the most tax base per foot of road that you possibly could, because that would allow you to take care of that road. Well, in post-war development, what we do is we just spread everything out all over the place. We actually have very low productivity, very low amount of tax base per foot of road. Now understand, it's not just road, it's sewer, it's water, it's streetlights, it's snow plowing, it's stormwater drainage. It's like every service that the city provides. You can cash flow this in the short term, but you end up in kind of a Ponzi scheme situation where you're just trying to grow to pay for all of the promises you made generation ago. And what we find cities today are just, they're done. We've done this for 75 years and cities are broke. They've reached the limit.
They can't maintain what they have the obligation to maintain now. So every penny that comes in, they're having to fix a decade ago's problem that hadn't been fixed in a decade. And they can't build.
But that makes it, that makes it sound like they've been negligent and like they haven't done their due diligence, right? Like, oh, we knew the roof needed to be repaired, but we just chose to put it off for a while. No, it actually means that you bought more house than you can afford. Like you can't afford to maintain the roof. You don't have the cash flow to do it. You don't have a job that will pay, like you bought too much house. Cities have, in a sense, bought too much stuff and not gotten enough return from it. So there isn't money to actually fix it.
Huh. So how does strong towns help with that? Because I'm sitting here going,
Well,
man, Chuck,
yeah,
this is not a small problem. You can just band-aid it, fix it, move on. Like,
no.
what are you guys doing?
Well, there's a number of things. I think the first one is that we're trying to, right off the bat, and this is from 2008 when I first started writing to today, we're trying to let people know about this narrative. So many people, when they're elected to city council, especially today where we're so partisan and so polarized, come in with what I think is like an overly simplistic notion of what should happen. We're just not charging people enough, so we need to raise taxes. Or government is too wasteful and bureaucratic. We just need to tighten our belt. And both of those are like macroeconomic caricatures that come out of our politics. Both of them don't apply at the local level. It's like far more complicated than that. So getting people a narrative that actually explains what's going on is challenging because it gets you out of your fantasy world. But it's also liberating because it actually points to a solution or a path that you can go down to make things better. We then talk to cities about like, don't dig the hole deeper. Here's what good investments look like. Here's how to kind of monitor how you're doing. Here's how to respond when you get a request in. Here's how to look at your, there's all kinds of different aspects of running a city, and we can bring them all to bear in a different way to get a better outcome. But generally, it looks like doing things that are smaller, more incremental, more iterative, as opposed to like big home run swings, which is generally what we try to do today at the local level.
Hmm. So put a little bit more vocabulary on that for me. I'm not
Yeah.
in this space, so I'm
Let me give
thinking,
you,
yeah,
here's what the best investment that a city can make, bar none, is to plant street trees. Like literally, when you plant street trees, you are spending very, very little money
yeah.
to create something that actually generates, in terms of tax base and wealth, a ton of value for your city. So this doesn't seem like a big deal, right? Like planting a street tree, like that's beneath us. Like we got roads to fix and all that. But I've seen studies, and we can, studies are all over the place. But you put a $75 street tree in, and in 5 years, that street tree will generate thousands of dollars of increased property value, which in a sense is like increased tax base. And if you look at like, okay, we're going to build a new road and get a strip mall and a gas station, and that is an investment to get a tax base. Well, a street tree is an investment to get a much greater percentage return on that investment in terms of tax base. When you start there, you see that things like making it easier for people to walk, so crosswalks, fixing up sidewalks, narrowing up streets actually cost less to build and make, again, the tax base more valuable. Taking gaps that you have in the streetscape and filling those in with buildings and stuff, allowing your one-story building to become 2- and 3-story buildings. When you stack buildings on top of each other, it's the same amount of pipe, the same amount of roadway, so the same cost, but more tax base. So these are all kind of, they're not sexy strategies. They're not like huge ribbon cutting things, but they're like the diet and exercise of making your city stronger and healthier and just function better.
Wow. They don't get headlines. Nobody's talking about, hey guys, we're putting new trees down Third Street. But in the long run, it's an incredible investment. So I think of high density. Where I live, we talk about high density a lot. There's apartment complexes going in everywhere, and that's difficult. You're not saying high density is the answer. You're just saying build more value, and it doesn't have to just sprawl forever and ever and ever and knock down farms and pave paradise, put over a parking lot. There's other ways to do it.
So now you're getting like into the jujitsu level of conversation on this. So density is one of these terms that planners use that I think are really unhelpful. We rarely talk in terms of density. Certainly not density as a metric that we're trying to hit. But density tends to be the outcome of a successful place. You tend to have better density. But when you start with the idea that we need apartments, what tends to happen in our current structure is that you get large lots with green space around it, a big parking lot, and then bam, high density and apartment building. And when you look at that from a financial standpoint, you waste so much space that financially it tends to not work out either, even though it might provide like a lot of housing in one place. If you took a neighborhood like mine out the door, or like my board chair is in Denver and actually ran the numbers in Denver. Denver's something like they need 20,000 more housing units that are affordable in order to make affordable housing work. And so they're out building high rises and apartments and everybody's mad and there's all this friction. If you just put one ADU or one backyard cottage, so if you put like a little 400, 500 square foot unit in a backyard of one house, if you did that on every block in Denver, once every 5 years, you would solve the housing problem in Denver, or you would have those 20,000 units. So we're not talking about, from a strong town standpoint, going out and like ripping down neighborhoods and building high density, like Soviet style. You're really talking about just allowing neighborhoods to breathe and change and evolve and thicken up over time in a way that is really healthy.
Yeah. So what is ADU? You just use that term.
I should not have used that term. It's a stupid planner term. In fact, it slipped out of my mouth. I tell people never to use it. An ADU in technical planner speak is an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
It's a backyard cottage. Think of it as like a
mother-in-law suite.
A mother-in-law suite is probably the best way to think about it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so you've been an engineer and a business owner, and now you're a nonprofit leader. Tell me about this step from going from I own a business and engineering firm, I'm growing, blowing and growing, and then kind of downsizing a little bit, and then you began really with serving the mission of Strong Towns, which was the thought leadership. You're writing, you're speaking, you're talking about what you guys are doing. Then your friends help incorporate this nonprofit, and now you're leading a pretty sizable nonprofit. What has that transition been like for you?
It's been, so we're in December now, and December is this like reflective time of the year. We're having our staff retreat next week, so we bring everybody together from the organization because we're all remote, so we get together once a year at Disney World actually, and I do a report for my board at the end of the year, so it's like a reflective time. This is like an annual tradition of just catching your breath from the insanity. I feel like I have done 20 years of learning and I'm barely getting, like, I still like feel like I have so much to learn, because when you're writing a blog and you're like, I'm going to start a podcast too, that's like a huge deal. That's really hard. I was blogging 3 days a week, and then I add a podcast. I'm doing that all in evenings and weekends while I got 2 young kids and my wife. I'm like, how do I make this work? And then it was, I really need help. How do I get enough money in this thing to add an employee? And that was like such a massive leap. That was so huge. Then it was like, my board is not being helpful to me. How do I get a board that I'm aligned with that can help me figure out the next step? And so I got a board together, and then it's like, what is that next step? How do we do it? And, I feel like every time, like going from 1 to 2, from 2 to 4, from 4 to 10, we're up to 24 of us, going from 20 to 30, I've been told now, is the hardest thing to do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought going from 10 to 20 was the hardest thing to do. It seems like there's always a new set of challenges. And I'm kind of keenly aware. I'll say this. I've studied other nonprofits, and I've seen where they reach a capacity limit based on their founder. Some founders are good with like getting to that 3 or 4 level stage, but then can't manage a team of people. I feel like I could manage a team of people. The struggle that I'm working on now is trying to manage a team of managers managing other people. And that's really been weird and a challenge. I'm still figuring, that's like my latest challenge I'm failing at and trying to get better at. But yeah, it's been 20 years of ramping up. There's this saying that you rise to your highest level of incompetence. I always feel like I'm like one step beyond what I'm like really, really competent at doing. And so I'm trying to figure out what that next thing is. Let me give you this. In 2014, we started to recognize that our strength as an organization was building a movement around content and media. I'm an engineer and a planner. I'm not a media guru. I don't know how to do camera angles. Like, I don't know how to write copy. I like to write, but I wasn't like that. So I actually did like a crash course. I mean, I put myself through, I read dozens of books. I watched YouTube videos. I took online courses. How do you do online media? And, you know, we became one of the most widely read, widely seen media organizations in the urbanist space because we were advertising before everybody else. We were using social media in ways everybody else wasn't doing. That, to me, this position has always been that, where like there's a new thing I need to learn. And if I don't like throw myself 100% into it, we fall behind.
Yeah. So you're identifying the gaps. You're digging into those, figuring out how to manage, how to get through those gaps, how to fill those gaps, and then moving on to the next thing.
That's what it's all about. And
it's almost like living life out over the skis just a little bit. That seems to be what great leaders do. They just know, I'm going to figure this out when I get there.
That's interesting because I think that's how I would describe it, is like I always feel like I'm a little off balance. Like you're heading downhill and you're outrunning your own skis, and like, okay, I hope I stick the landing ultimately.
Yeah. I live life kind of with the phrase ready, fire, aim in my mind at all times. So many folks in life aim, and never pull the trigger. And I think there's a principle of leaders like you say, let's figure this out when we get there. We're going for it.
Now, okay, because I am in a reflective time of year,
yeah,
I agree with like what you just said. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's it. I also recognize that, and this is to me like the thing that I'm struggling with now. When you get an organization of our size and you have, in a sense, hierarchy that we never had, we are always a flat organization. So, and now we're not as much. I actually have to work through other leaders. And so part of my job is bringing them with me. And because they're competent, they have other ideas and other directions they want to go and other things they think are important. So part of doing this is like melding visions together. I've always had to do that with my board, but my board has been kind of like a check on my ready, fire, aim. Like, here's what I think we should do. And they're like, yeah, I don't think we're quite ready for that yet. They've been really good. I have to do that in two directions now. I don't have to just inspire and motivate. I have to listen and, like assimilate other ideas into my own. And, I do think that that's probably where a lot of founders struggle. That's where I'm struggling, because the vision's so clear to me and the direction's so clear to me, but making it owned by other people as well is like, that's a daunting challenge. You've got to have different levels of humility that probably don't come natural. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. How have you built your board to be that valuable and engaged and involved in your organization?
So my original board was me and the two people who helped me found it. And then we all had to get off for various reasons. And I wound up with a board of Minnesotans at a time when our organization started to really go national. And they wanted us to focus on Minnesota exclusively. And I'm like, look around, like that's not working. And so they were gracious enough to say, we will step aside and you tell us who should be on the board and we'll nominate them. And I had three really good friends. Andrew is an architect who does computer programming. John is in an advocacy space, and Ian is an attorney. These were people I was going to asking for advice anyway. And I put them on my board. And the agreement we had, they actually sat down with me and they said, Chuck, in this position, you need us to tell you the honest truth. You need us to be frank with you. You need us, we're your boss. Like, that's how nonprofits work, but we're also your friend. And so we have to make a promise to each other that if this ever becomes where we can't work together, we're going to move on and we're going to stay your friend, but we're not being helpful to you. And so for me, my part of that agreement has been, I've always had to pause when I've been mad at them or frustrated with them, or like, why are you on my case? Why are you asking me this? I've always had to, in a sense, defer to them and their judgment, to maintain the friendship part of it and to allow them to do their job. And so I feel like the thing that has made our organization great is the strategic vision that they have brought to it, that I have submitted myself to, in a sense. Now, I've been part of building it with them, obviously, but I've had to, in a sense, check myself in this structure that we've created, where they're volunteering their time, their energy, really their passion to this project, as co-creators of it. I mean, we call them all co-founders of the movement. But I've had to, in a sense, defer to them at times when my instinct was to do this, and they're like, no, do that. And you know, I've never, looking back, I can never point to a time where I think they've been wrong.
They just blew it. Yeah. It's been a valuable check and balance for you as you've been leading.
Yes. And, you know, do you do everything perfectly? No. You know, would we do things differently? Sure. We've learned a lot of lessons, but the reality is I think they've saved me from probably my worst instincts, and they have brought out in me things that I would certainly never have gotten to if I had a board that was more acquiescent or passive.
Yeah, that's great. Chuck, so good to learn about small towns, to hear your story, to hear about what's working in your organization. I've been listening to some of your podcasts. We'll put a link, a URL on the page here, then also on the video, then also in the show notes to your website, the Small Towns website. If people want to get involved or become a member, like you mentioned earlier, what are the steps they could take to do that?
So strong towns, some people fall into small towns, strong towns.
Misspoke there, yeah.
It's okay. And really, like, I think it's important because big cities are a collection of neighborhoods, which is really what a strong town is.
Yes.
So strongtowns.org is our website.
Yep.
And if you go there, you can get, we're still publishing an article a day. We got 4 different podcast streams. We got lots of video. If you're on any social media, you can literally just search Strong Towns and you will get us.
Yeah.
So yeah, wherever you're at, you can plug in and start to kind of learn at your own pace, and hopefully find your way into a local group or, you know, membership and supporting us. And we'd love to meet you.
That's great. And anybody who's watching this, if you're a leader of a nonprofit, Accordis, our company, we come alongside organizations like Chuck and Strong Towns, but also lots of other organizations and handle accounting, marketing, database type work. So if you're a nonprofit leader, Chuck has a great large team. He's not using us, but other organizations use us as a back office. So if you ever need that, reach out to us. I'll put my information on the closing screen here also. Chuck, Strong Towns, so good to meet you. It was a great talk with you today.
Thanks, Shae. And those early partners, when you're trying to figure stuff out in the early days, having a partner is really, really important. So I'm grateful for what you do.
You're right. Thank you.